Log on, tune in, find out. Another good idea from Cambridge.
So I'm going to spend just a few minutes articulating, hopefully reasonably clearly, what our idea was, and then sort of actually the bigger story of actually what we then did to go and sort of be where we are today as Breathing Buildings. So the first thing was that we were a spin out from the University of Cambridge looking at low energy buildings. And the first thing that we identified was, this was known in the industry, that there is a significant opportunity to reduce the energy consumption of buildings. And one way of doing that is to just go and look at the number of buildings that are fully air conditioned, mechanically ventilated, and compare the energy consumption of those buildings with ones which are, strictly speaking, naturally ventilated. In very brute terms, you could say, well, isn't natural ventilation just opening the windows? Because using the forces of nature, namely gravity and wind, to go and do the job for you. That's certainly one form of natural ventilation. There are one or two challenges associated with that, which the industry will then tell you. And I will sort of suggest to you that those are elements to do with control, and whether it's a nice environment. Do you really like howling gales coming through your office building in the depth of winter? The answer is probably no, and therefore your first reaction is to go and close the windows, in which case you then stuff the ventilation strategy, and you're then going to be in an inadequately ventilated environment, which is singularly unpleasant. However, there are some very positive drivers to go and say natural ventilation has actually got a sort of a role to play in buildings, and that is we're trying to create a lower energy society. If you just go and look at the energy consumption of the developed world, it's increasing year on year. What we know about the demand of the supply base, it isn't growing as fast, and some people say it's actually diminishing. So we have a gap in our knowledge of how we're going to meet that. And one way of doing that is to reduce the energy consumption of buildings. Building regulations, which is a form of law, of encouraging people to make their energy buildings, is a very strong driver encouraging natural ventilation. Energy prices, so it's not just in terms of what the government's doing, but we're all seeing escalations in our utility bills, and frankly, if you think we've seen increases so far, that's nothing compared with what's going to be happening in the future. We've got big hikes on the horizon. And then, more recently, there was the carbon reduction commitment, which was another financial incentive sort of brought in by a previous administration, which was subsequently quashed very recently. However, the government is still saying they want low energy buildings. So what are the issues? The issues that we identified in the research programme were these. Drafts in winter I've already alluded to. Another risk is we don't like buildings that are overly hot in the summer, and if you think sort of we've got it hot here, if you just move a bit further south into France and Germany, what role have we got for natural ventilation in climates like that? There is still a role, but you need to do something else other than just saying I want to bring in bucket loads of fresh air. If the fresh air is at 30 degrees, it's not going to be much cooler than 30 degrees in the interior. So you need to do something else. That's a challenge. And the third area that we identified was heating bills in naturally ventilated buildings are just heinous. They are large. And if you do it incorrectly, you're going to end up with, it's a lower energy building than a mechanically ventilated one, but you're going to be spending all the money that you have on heating bills. And we don't think that's right, and we came up with a way of avoiding it.